Hi and welcome back to the last lecture on ethical hacking, and today we'll be covering defensive tools. Now we know that the biggest challenge faced by the security professionals is to keep the environment secure wherever we are working. This task becomes increasingly difficult due to the emergence of new and improved threats on the daily basis. The number of users interacting with the networks and accessing the resources has been increased thanks to the widespread use of always connected devices. Additionally, the complexity of the networks and infrastructure has grown with the adoption of the remote work and advanced connection techniques like VPN, etc. Now, securing and managing the IT environments in such complex scenarios requires combination of capabilities and techniques. These techniques can be broadly classified into categories, for example, prevention and detection. While the prevention effort focuses on the stopping the attacks using firewalls, policies, and other measures, there are times when new and unexpected attacks can bypass these defenses. In such cases, detection becomes crucial. Intrusion detection systems and honeypots are the devices and technologies that aid to the detecting and responding to the attacks that manage the breach, or they are the preventive measures against those kind of attacks. Overall, security professionals need to consider the complexity of their IT environments that constitutes the evolution of threats and the balance between the prevention detection strategies to effectively protect the networks and the infrastructure. Now that was about the introduction of this chapter. We look at the learning objectives to perform the incident handling, identify the security controls, apply the defensive tools and techniques. Then we'll talk about how can defense in depth increases the security. We'll list the two forms of IDS, which is intrusion detection system. We'll describe the goals of IDS, and we'll list the detective methods of IDS. We'll list different type of firewalls, describe the purpose of firewalls. We'll describe the purpose of honeypots, and then the purpose of the administrative control. Then we'll describe the purpose of the administrative controls and describe best practices for securing the environment. Further, we'll be looking at the following key concepts where intrusion detection and prevention systems will be explained. Firewalls will be discussed, honeypots and honeynets, and the role of these controls. Now, first of all, let's try to understand defense in depth. Now, the first step to secure the computing environment is to minimize the attack surface of any protected resource by removing or reducing the vulnerability. So if we have any system, we'll have to find the known vulnerabilities of the system which can be exploited by the adversaries. The most secure environment using a multi-layered defense strategy which requires compromising multiple controls to exploit any vulnerability. This approach known as defense in depth. So once we have layers and layers of protection, that kind of protection is called defense in depth. The approach is known as defense in depth and shows that if an attacker breaches one layer of defense, they still have to breach additional layers before reaching the target source. Just like in this one, we have different layers of protection. For example, protected resource, file and data sensitive is right in the middle, and behind that we have the encryption mechanism, then access control and firewall. So step by step the attacker would have to bypass all these different layers of defenses before they can reach the main target. After that, we look at the intrusion detection systems. When we talk about intrusion detection system, it is either a hardware appliance or a software that collects and analyzes the information from a computer or network to detect unauthorized or suspicious activity. It functions as an aggressive packet sniffer, capturing network traffic for analysis by using predicted rules or the predefined rules. The IDS compares the intercepted traffic to known patterns of good and bad behavior. When an intrusion detection system identifies a suspected intrusion, it issues an alarm through the email, message, or log files, and eventually it would notify the network administrators that any kind of intrusion is actually taking place. It's important to note that while the intrusion detection system detects the attacks, it does not prevent them. By the time intrusion detection system detects an attack, it means that the attack is already underway. So the difference between the intrusion detection system and prevention systems is that the intrusion detection system would detect the attack only, but it won't prevent it, but it will notify the administrators. whereas the intrusion prevention system will take corrective measures in order to stop that attack. If you want to know that how can we use it, we have released a video on Snort on our channel. That's the intrusion detection and prevention system which we use on Linux operating systems. You can follow the video in order to get better understanding of intrusion detection systems. Now, when we talk about intrusion detection systems, there are different categories and things which it is detecting: intrusion, misuse, intrusion detection, and misuse detection. Now, intrusion is an unauthorized use or access of a system by an individual, party, or a service. That simply put an intrusion in any activity that should not be there, but it is occurring on an information system, so it would notify us for that. Then we have misuse, the improper use of the privilege or resource within an organization. So if someone else is using a system for which they don't have access to the resource itself, the system would notify it. Intrusion detection is a technique of uncovering the successful or attempted unauthorized access to the information system. So it won't even notify you about a intrusion which is taking place or has successfully taken place. It would even notify you that if an intrusion attempt was made in order to penetrate in a system. Misuse detection is the ability to detect misuse of the resources and the privileges. So if someone is misusing the resources or the privileges which are granted to that individual, intrusion detection systems are capable to detect that as well. Now we'll see different mechanisms of intrusion detection systems, and if we'll see the mechanisms, we have different. For example, we have signature recognition, we have anomaly detection, and both of them have their own advantages and disadvantages and their own way of identifying the things. If we talk about signature recognition, is also known as the misuse detection. The technique is used by intrusion detection systems to identify known attacks or activities that indicate misuse or intrusion. The intrusion detection system is programmed to analyze the signature or patterns associated with the known attacks in an information system or network. For example, intrusion detection system is monitoring a web server, may be configured to detect the presence of a string, for example, a PHP file, which could be which could identify a common gateway interface, which is a CGI, or a program attack, etc. By recognizing the signature, the IDS can alert the system owner about the potential attack and the attempt to execute the unauthorized access. So it's a technique attempt to detect activities that may be indicative of misuse or intrusion, and it uses a signature analysis to identify the known attacks. On the other hand, we have anomaly detection. Now, anomaly detection is, on the other hand, focuses on the detecting the deviations from the known or the model of normal activity in an environment. The system owner creates this model based on their understanding of what the typically accessed and is expected of the behavior on the network. In modern systems, IDS can be configured to observe the network traffic in a training mode to learn what is considered a normal and abnormal within a given network. Any deviation from the established model and flag potential intrusion and trigger alerts to the administrators. So if you might have seen that if you are using an antivirus solution which comes up with a security suite, you'll have a firewall, you'll have anti-spamware and antivirus installed. So there are different modes to for the firewall as well. It could be in the automatic mode, which is in the learning mode, so it would detect that what kind of traffic is allowed and what kind of traffic is blocked. It's the same thing in anomaly based detection, that it would read the pattern that what is considered to be a normal behavior, and then it would distinguish if a user is deviating from there. Now it uses a known model for the activity in an environment and report deviations from its model. In modern systems, IDS is configured to observe the traffic in training mode, in which it observes the lessons, what is normal and what is abnormal on a typical network. With either method, IDS can respond with an alert using one of the several criteria which are defined in the system. Now we have an interesting matrix over here, which tells us about the response matrix of an IDS. We have positive and negative, and then we have true and false. It could be positive or true positive. An alert was generated in response to an actual intrusion attempt, so that was true and it triggered a positive alert on that. Whereas if it is a false positive, an alert was triggered in response to a perceived but not threatening event, and if it would pass an alert like that, it would be flagged as false positive. Then we have a true positive or true negative. For example, an alert was not generated because no suspicious activity was detected, and none occurred or none attack was taking place on the network. Whereas a false negative could be an alert can be generated or it was not generated because no suspicious activity was detected in the system. Further, we'll see different type of IDS. We have network-based intrusion detection system, we have host-based intrusion detection system, we have log file monitoring and file integrity checking. Now, if we talk about network-based intrusion detection system, they are designed to detect suspicious activity and potential intrusions on the network. They cannot identify activities such as misuse, SYN flood attacks, or the MAC flood attacks, and other similar type of behaviors. Network intrusion detection system devices monitor the network by using the network card in a promiscuous mode, which allows to capture all network traffic passing through the switch connected to a single port. Now, signs of a network intrusion detection can include repeated probes of available services on machines within the network. Secondly, the connections originating from the usual or unusual or unauthorized locations. Multiple login attempts from the remote host indicating the potential brute force attack, or any kind of data present which is there in the log file suggests that the attempt was made in order to generate a denial of service attack. Now, network intrusion detection system plays a critical role in identifying the potential network intrusions by monitoring the network traffic and detecting the patterns or behaviors that indicate unauthorized or malicious activities. Now, when we look at host-based intrusion detection systems, they are designed to monitor and analyze activities on a specific host or computer, focusing on events and changes that occur within that system rather than the network. The host-based intrusion detection systems can track the access, event logs, usage, and modifications to the host, allowing them to detect various indicators of the potential intrusion. These kind of indicators would include like modification made to the system software configuration, gap in the system accounting records, abnormal slow system performance, system crashes and unexpected reboots, short or incomplete log entries, entries in the log, logs of incorrect permissions, missing the log entries, anomalies in the system performance, unfamiliar or the suspicious processes running, or unusual graphical displays, or the text is displayed in the system. HIDS provides the valuable layer of security by monitoring and alerting the administrators to potential threats or unauthorized activities occurring within a specific host or computer. When we talk about log file monitoring, it's a software in this category specifically designed to analyze the log files and look for specific events and activities. It can look in any thing in the log files, for improper file access to failed login attempts, log file activity that can be generated, and it would include the failed or successful logins, file access, permission changes, privilege use, system setting changes, or the account creation, etc. If we talk about the file integrity checking, it's a type of IDS software that focuses on detecting changes in the files that may indicate an attack or unauthorized behavior. It uses techniques such as hashing to compare the current state of the files with their known or expected states. Tripwire is one of the oldest IDS systems initially utilized for this approach. File integrity checking is particularly effective in detecting ransomware attacks, and it can identify the changes made to the files through the encryption. Some indications of the file system intrusion can be detected in the integrity checking, which may include the presence of unfamiliar files or programs, etc., changes in the file permission, unexplained changes in the file size, identification of the rogue files of the system that do not match with the master or the listed signed files, unfamiliar file names, directories, or missing files. By monitoring and comparing the integrity of files. This type of IDS software helps identify potential unauthorized modifications or intrusions within a system file as well. Now this is a comparison where IDS components, NIDS, which is network intrusion detection, and host intrusion detection systems and their features are mentioned. For example, if we look at the NIDS, which is network intrusion detection, it's best suited for the large environments where the critical assets on the network need extra observation, whereas on the host-based intrusion detection system is best suited for environments where critical system levels assets need monitoring only. The management concerns for network intrusion detection is it not an issue in large environments, may incur too much overhead in smaller environments, whereas it requires specific adjustment in considerations on the system. If we'll see the advantages of network intrusion detection systems, it's ideally for monitoring the sensitive network segments, whereas on host-based intrusion detection system, the advantage is that it's ideal for monitoring specific systems. Next, we are talking about the IDS components. Now, IDS is not a single entry but a collection of components that work together to provide overall protection. It's distributed across multiple systems, and each component plays a critical role in monitoring the network intrusions. The IDS solution includes various components with different responsibilities. These components is not only monitoring the intrusions, but can also perform the functions such as pattern recognition of matching known attacks, analysis of the traffic of the abnormal communication, integrity checking, tracking the user and system activity, traffic monitoring, traffic analysis, event log monitoring, and its analysis as well. Now, the specific feature capabilities of an IDS may vary depending on the vendor. Some IDS systems may offer only a subset of these features, while the other providers provide a broader range of services. However, the basic components of IDS remains consistent across different vendors. Overall, IDS are a comprehensive solution that combines various components to effectively monitor and detect intrusions in a network. For example, we have a network sensor over here and we have a machine. So a monitoring console is there which is constantly monitoring for any sort of activity which is taking place on the network. Now further we'll see some components of a network intrusion detection. It uses a signature based detection method to detect an intrusion and alert the system owner. A host creates a network packet. At this point, nothing is known other than that the packet exists and was sent from the host in the network. Now the sensor sniffs the packet of the network segment. This sensor is placed so that it can read the packets, and the IDS and the sensors match the packets with the known signatures of misuse. When a match is detected, an alert is generated and sent to the command console. So that's why it is looking for the signatures of the files. It's not looking at the name of the files or the size of the files. If it would detect that it is matching a particular signature, it would notify the administrator that potentially a network attack is in progress. The command console receives and displays the alert, which notifies the security administrator or system owner for intrusion. The system owner responds based on the information provided by the IDS. He'll have to check first that it's actually an attack taking place or it's a false alarm. The alert is logged to the system analysis and reference either in the local database or in the central location shared by the several systems. So even if it is handled or if it was suppressed or any action was taken, still the information related to that is usually logged in the database, which can be monitored later. Now these are the components of a host intrusion detection system. It's a monitoring agent installed, and then there is a monitoring agent installed on another PC. So if there is an activity taking place, the monitoring console will be updated that there is a attack in progress on any specific computer on the network. Now we'll see at setting up goals for an IDS. So whenever we are setting up IDS, it's crucial to define the system goals before deploying it. Planning is necessary to ensure its proper and effective functioning. Two common goals of IDS are response capability and accountability. When an intrusion detection system, a threat or a suspicious activity is detected, it needs to respond accordingly. The IDS analyzes the data and compares it with a known rules of behavior, and once the match is found, an action is made or usually taken, typically in form of an alert. The specific response action can vary depending on the goal set on the IDS. Common response includes sending an alert to the administrator via text message, instant messaging, email, or anything like that. The IDS also logs the event. Now, logs serve multiple purposes beyond the budget planning. They are valuable for analyzing historical data, evaluating the effectiveness of the security measures, and understanding how and why the breach occurred. Since the IDS detects or detects the attacks in a way that they have happened in the past, it is essential to investigate and understand any breaches that have occurred to strengthen the security measures to prevent the future attacks. So that's what we are talking about over here as well, that we need to define the goals, two common goals to the response capability and accountability. Response can be include sending an alert, and accountabilities include defining the process in which the source and the main cause of it is identified so that we can avoid it if any situation like that arises in the future. Now, if we talk about IDS limitations, is not only a problem solver. IDS supplements existing security technologies. Failed hardware, for example, if hardware supporting IDS software fails, it has the sensor on command console on it. IDS may become ineffective or worthless. And investigation of an event, the IDS observes and compares and detects the intrusion and triggers an alert, but it does not provide a way to deal with that incident because it is just a intrusion detection system. It's not a prevention system to take appropriate measures. Analysis of the information collected is the large amount of the data which is generated, and the data requires careful analysis so that we can take actions on the information which is collected by IDS systems. Now we are talking about intrusion prevention systems. Intrusion prevention system is the next step beyond the intrusion detection system and offers additional capability to protect the system from attacks. It uses various methods of access control and prevent unauthorized access to secure the network. IPS devices or the software were originally developed to enhance the capabilities of IDS, while IDS primarily serve as the passive monitoring systems with limited response capabilities. IPS provides active protection by analyzing content, application access, and other details to make access determinations. Unlike IDS, IPS can provide deeper insights into the activities occurring on the network, such as identifying overly active hosts, detecting bad login activities, and preventing the access to inappropriate content. IPS operates on both network layer and application layer, providing the comprehensive defense against the potential threats. Now, it extends the capability of IDS, provides the capability to analyze. IPS responses the attacks and regulate to respond the suspicious traffic. It would block the systems. It would log out the misuse users from the account, and the forms of the IPS are either host-based or a network-based. Now here we are looking at firewalls, that what are firewalls and what's the main purpose of the firewalls. Now we might have used different firewalls on our PC or on the organization level. Firewalls have evolved significantly over the years, transitioning from the basic packet filtering devices to advanced system capable or analyzing the application layer traffic. They have become crucial component on a network security. Firewalls serve as a barrier between the different zones of trust, separating the networks or segments based on varying levels of trust. They can be positioned at the network perimeter or internally within the organizations. At the perimeter, firewall controls access between the organization internal network and the outside world. They enforce the rules that determine which type of traffic is allowed or denied. Firewalls can also segment the internal networks, controlling the traffic flow between different parts of the organization for the security purposes. The segmentation helps the protection of sensitive information and restricts the access to specific resources. Firewalls are deployed whenever there is a need to control the traffic between the areas of different trust levels. As the threat have become more complex, firewalls have adapted to address the emerging challenges like SYN flood attacks, denial of service attacks, and other sophisticated behaviors, etc. Firewalls play a crucial role in countering those evolving threats and ensuring network security in the face of increasing attacks and complexities. As you can see that there is an internet and there is a firewall in between which is protecting your network from any sort of external threats which are posed to your organization. Now there are different methodologies for a firewall. First of all, we have packet filtering, performs basic analysis of the traffic, grants and denies the access based on the limited factors such as the IP address, port, protocol, and little else. So we can define that which source can access which resources, which ports are allowed, which ports are not allowed, what kind of protocols can we allow. So we can control all those things through a packet filtering. Now stateful inspection is the attribute of each connection and are noted and stored by the firewall. Attributes are described in the state of a connection containing such as the IP address, port involved, the connection, and the sequence number of the packets which are crossing the firewall. Then we have application proxying, performs translation of the final server address and the additional access, control checking and logging of necessary, and then connects the server on behalf of the client, so it acts as a proxying server in between as well. Next is the limitations of firewalls. Now firewalls have limitations that needed to be understood to maximize their effectiveness. Simply relying on a firewall without considering the capabilities and the specific threats it can address may lead to ineffective security measures. Some of the areas where firewalls provide little or no value in stopping the threats include, first of all, we have viruses. Now, while some firewalls can scan or block the viruses, it's not the primary function, and their ability to detect evolving viruses may diminish over time. Regularly updating the firewall viruses definitions or the database is crucial for maintaining the effectiveness. However, it should not be considered a replacement for detecting or using it as an antivirus or an anti-malware solution. Second thing is misuse. Firewalls face challenges in addressing internal misuse, as employees often have the higher level of access in the systems. If the employees disregard the organization rules by introducing unauthorized software or downloading it from the internet, firewalls alone cannot effectively prevent this behavior. Then we have secondary connections. Secondary connections are the firewalls may struggle to handle secondary access points that bypass the corporate network. For example, if employees can connect to mobile hotspots on their smartphones, it creates a hole in the firewall protection. Then we have social engineering. Firewalls are ineffective against social engineering attacks where individuals manipulate others to gain the unauthorized access and sensitive information. If network administrators unknowingly provide confidential information to unauthorized individuals, the effectiveness of the firewall can be compromised. And finally, we have poor design. If a firewall is poorly designed or implemented without proper consideration of security policies and practices, it may have vulnerabilities or gaps in its protection and rendering its less effectiveness. Now, to mitigate these limitations, organizations should implement comprehensive security measures that encompasses multiple layers of defense, including firewalls, antivirus solutions, employee education, and adherence to the security policies and practices. Now we'll look at implementation of firewalls, and there are many options of installing firewalls, and understanding each one is key in getting the correct deployment for the organization. Following are the description options for the firewall implementation. We have different kind of setup for them: single packet filtering device, multi-home device, screened host device, or demilitarized zone, which we call it as DMZ as well. Now, single packet filtering in this setup, the network is protected by a single packet filtering device configured to permit or deny the access. In multi-home device, the device has multiple network interfaces that use the rules to determine how packets will be forwarded between these interfaces, which one is there which is receiving and which one is there which is sending the traffic. Screened out is with the screened out host. The network is protected by a device that combines the features of a proxy server with the packet filtering as well. Demilitarized zone is a region of the network or zone that is a sandwich between the two different firewalls. Just like if we want to authenticate the users against an email server, we usually keep it in the demilitarized zone. Now here we are looking at a single packet filtering device. Network is protected by a single packet filtering device configured to permit or deny the access. As you can see that the firewall is in the middle and it is allowing specific traffic to the LAN. Then we have a second layer, which is a multi-home device that has multiple network interfaces that use rules to determine how the packets will be forwarded to the interfaces. So you'll have the internet and then you have firewall in between. So it is segregating the traffic which is flowing between two different LANs. Then we have a screened host. A network is protected by a device that combines the features of a proxy servers with packet filtering. So from the internet it would go to the router, from the router it would go to the firewall, and then it would design that where the traffic should flow in between the devices. Then in demilitarized zone, it's a region of the network or the zone that sandwiches between the two networks. So if a traffic is coming from the internet, as I told you, if you are having a mail server over here which would be authenticated on an active directory in the LAN, so you'll put the server which is a mail server in between, and then there will be another firewall which would be protecting your active directory on premises. Then authoring a firewall policy. How can we define it? So before acquiring and installing a firewall in an organization, should have a well-defined firewall policy that outlines how the firewall will be configured and how it aligns with the specific security goal. The firewall policy serves as a blueprint for the installation, configuration, and management, ensuring that the firewall addresses the right problems in the right way and avoid unexpected issues. Ideally, the firewall policy should be established before the firewall is installed to guide its design and implementation. The firewall policy is a subset of the overall organizational security policy and should be in line with supporting and enforcing the organization security objective through the firewall. When creating a firewall policy, there are two common approaches in controlling the traffic in and out of the organization. We say it implicitly allow everything or explicitly deny only those things that you want to. So you'll control yourself that which things you want to explicitly allow or deny on the system, and implicitly deny everything, allow only those things which you know that they are needed. So there are two ways to manage it. One is to allow everything and block certain things. On the other side, you'll allow only the things which you think are right for the network. Several commonly used approaches for creating for firewall policy include network connection policy, the contracted worker statement, and the firewall administrator statement, etc. These approaches provide the structure and guidance for defining how the firewall will be configured to meet the organizational security requirements. After that, we have network connectivity policy. The portion of the firewall policy being referred to focus on defining the specific devices and connections that are allowed to connect to the organization network. The policy outlines details such as the network operating system, approved devices types, device configuration, and communication protocols, etc. This aspect of the firewall policy plays a significant role in determining the effectiveness of the firewall. It establishes the rules and restrictions to permitted network traffic and shapes how the communication will take place within the network. Now, network scanning is prohibited except by approved personals, like you'll stop all ping and other activities. Only certain types of the network communication will be allowed. Users will access the web via port 80 only, and the users may access the email on port 25. So you'll have to define these policies on your firewall. Users may not access the network news or network transfer protocol, etc. Antivirus software must be updated, installed, and running on the computers, on all the computers on the network. Only network administrators can install new hardware or the software on the computers, and no unauthorized connections to the internet will be allowed. Further, we look at the contracted personal statements. It says that no contractors or temporary personnel shall have access to unauthorized resources, no contractors or temporary personnel shall be permitted to scan the network, and no contractors or temporary personnel may use the file transfer protocol and other things. So as we know that there are lots of people who are coming in and going out of your organization. For some users you will have to provide the internet access, but their account should be restricted where they'll not be able to perform all these things which are mentioned over here. Then we have the firewall administrator statement. That encompasses that the firewall administrator should be thoroughly trained on all firewall softwares and devices in use. So they must have proper up-to-date training for the different kind of firewalls that you're using. The firewall administrator must be aware of all the application and the services which are authorized to access the network. The firewall administrator will report to an entity such as the chief information officer, and there will be a procedure in place for reaching the firewall administrator in an event of a security incident, or if you want to make any changes to the network, it would be properly written documented request which would go to the firewall administrator, and based on those requests he will take appropriate measures in order to allow or block certain traffic which should be allowed on the network. Then we have honeypots and honeynets. A honeypot is a computer configured to attract attackers to it as a decoy. So we deploy a honeypot on the network so that we can identify if someone is trying to play with the systems. Placed in a location so that if an attacker is able to get around to the firewall and other security devices, the honeypot draws attention away from more sensitive assets. So he'll try his own skill set and his payloads on this one, and you'll detect it, and you'll be able to protect your systems against any kind of attempts which were made, since honeypots are relatively easier to penetrate in, and they are named in a way that it would attract the attacker towards it and it would lose focus from the rest of the systems. Honeynet is a group of vulnerable systems, honeypots on a network, and the legal issues is that if an organization deploys a honeypot where someone can attack it, and someone does, the organization seek the prosecution of the attacker for a crime, and would the honeypot be admissible as an evidence. So you'll have to decide that even if someone is trying to penetrate on a honeypot, though it is deployed by you, whether it would be prosecuted in the court or you'll use it for the learning purposes. Our honeypots are a form of the entrapment, so you'll have to define it yourself on the system on which you are operating. Then we have the role of controls. The mechanisms that protect organizations from security threats can be categorized into three main areas: administrative controls, physical controls, and technical controls. These controls are designed to safeguard resources and form part of a comprehensive security solution. By implementing a layered approach to the security known as defense in depth, these controls work together to ensure that the security is effectively maintained. This approach is similar to the design of a castle, which incorporates multiple defenses such as moats, walls, gates, arches, and knights, etc. The layered approach provides the multiple layer of security protection which measures and serves as the hedge against the failure. So if one layer of the mechanism fails, there is another in place to provide the protection. So by combining the layers, you are having an advantage of multiple mechanism of protection and advantage of having a hedge against the failure so that you can easily protect your network. Now, the role of the control is administrative, technical, and physical. As I told you, implicitly deny or allow least privileges, separation of the duties, job rotation and mandatory vacation, privilege management, etc. So you won't provide a complete access to an individual who will have complete access to the system. So you will have the separation of duties. So every person would be responsible within his own domain, and then there will be a job rotation so that everyone is responsible for other things as well, and it would be a controlled environment that one person, if he has exclusive access to the things, he won't be able to make a massive changes on the network for that specific thing. Mandatory vacation is required so that they can check that if other people can comfortably run the system, and privilege management should be there, that if a person leaves, you must immediately disable the account and must maintain the privacy and regulatory compliance on these accounts as you are using. Then we have technical controls, access of the control software, malware solution, password security tokens, and the biometrics and antivirus, etc. Further, we have discretionary access control, role-based access controls, and then mandatory access controls. Discretionary access controls is an access method that depends on the owner or the author of the data to manage the security. The prime example of a DAC is the use of the folder and file permissions under the DAC, which is a discretionary access control. The owner or the creator of the data can grant the read, write, execute permissions, etc. This security management model provides a quick and easy way to change the security settings. However, it is the problems associated with the being decentralized. The decentralization of the security management means that there could be inconsistent application or settings. When we talk about role-based access controls, it's an access control method based on the role that an individual holds within an organization. RBAC excels the environment in which a medium to large pool of the users exist. In this model, users are assigned the roles based on the functions and they are assigned permissions. So if someone is working in registration office, only he will be allowed to access the resources of that registration server. Rest of the people will not have access to those things. Then we have mandatory access control. It's a system that uses level of determining the type of the extent of access to a resource and the permission and the clearance level is granted to each user. These type of the access controls system requires more effort to manage than DAC and RBAC because you'll have to assess that if the person who is actually requesting the access, whether they need it or not. Then we have physical controls. In physical controls, we have alternative sources, power sources. It means that we have uninterrupted power supplies and the backup generators, etc. Flood management, if you have any mechanisms in order to foresee or in order to control those kind of things, deducting another mechanism designed to quickly evacuate the water from the area. Then we have fences, which is a structure that are designed to prevent access to sensitive facilities, either as a simple deterrent or an imposing physical barrier. Then we have guards. These are the human guards, placing a human element outside around the sensitive areas, which would protect the area from any unauthorized access. Then we have locks, devices to prevent the easy access to sensitive areas, fire suppression system, devices such as sprinklers, etc., and fire extinguishers. Biometrics are there, which are used in conjunction with the locks to regulate the physical access to the location, and then location provides some measures of protection, ensuring that the facility are not located where they may be prone to threats such as the fire or floods, etc. Then we look at the next slide, which is talking about the security best practices. Securing an organization information system environment can be challenging, but best practices offers valuable guidance. These practices are based on the lessons learned from the experience and provide the tested approaches that yield good results in most situations. While there is a no one-size-fits-all solution, best practice serves as the foundation for implementing effective security measures. This section explores the various sources that offer security best practices to assist the organizations in their security efforts. For example, we have security information and event management. We call it as SIEM as well. It's a collection of software devices that help security professionals to manage their environment, monitor the logs, network traffic, and the processes from the security event. So it's a centralized thing where it would be collecting the traffic from the logs, network traffic, processes, and security events all together under one banner or under one umbrella. It provides a real-time analysis, it stores the activity and trend analysis, and triggers an alert for any suspicious activity. Since it's collecting the information from all different sources, it has the knowledge of all the activities which are taking place and the things which are quite critical. Provide tools to manage the security controls and collection of the security events of the data. Further, there are some different sources of guidance available on the internet. You can visit the NIST website, which is National Institute of Standards and Technology. You can even visit Security Technical Implementation Guidelines, and you have a resource of STIG as well, which is a search tool with the help of which you can get the latest information about the security practices. So that brings us to the end of the chapter, and the summary is intrusion detection and prevention systems. Then we talked about firewalls, honeypots and honeynets, and the role of controls as well. I hope these course helped you in understanding basic stuff about ethical hacking. That's it for today. Thank you very much.